My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt Video 13, Santa's Mystery Tour, Part 1. So here is the cover, John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt, a novella by John Passfield. That's me at the age I was when I was in elementary school. Okay, as a writer, John Passfield is driving home from a December book discussion meeting and thinking about the Christmas topics that were discussed, in particular Dickens, who wrote a novella that transformed the world's conception of Christmas. He suddenly finds himself sitting in a sleigh, pulled by Rudolph and 8 tiny reindeer. What an excellent opportunity to ask Santa about a 70-year-old puzzle, the mystery of the missing cowboy shirt. Not the one on the cover, but the one that was never put under the tree at Christmas time. During the ride around the world, Santa stops at various places. John expects Santa to explain the significance to Santa of these places, and it surprises John when Santa doesn't seem to want to speak about them. So let's have a look at some of them then. We'll go to page 18 to start with. Here it is. So they're riding around the world in Santa's sleigh, John and Santa Claus. Once in a while they touch down, and it's a place, as we'll see in a moment, but Santa doesn't say anything about it. So John thinks about each of these places. So there really is the North Pole. I've seen it so many times on postcards, but I've never really believed it was actually there. I guess it could serve as a hitching post, but these reindeer are so docile that Santa would never have to tie them down, like the horses who pulled the milk and bread wagons when I was a boy, or the horse that stopped by woods on a snowy evening. Snow's falling, just like it does at home, gently floating down to the ground, a white curtain in the sunshine on a beautiful winter day. Santa raises a finger and points. There's a break in the curtain of snow. It's a beautiful snow-covered vision, a candy cane house, and what looks like a workshop right beside. And elves, a couple of elves. 2 elves just opened up the workshop door. Must be taking a break from making the children's toys. A snowball fight breaks out. More elves come out and take up sides. Too far to hear their laughter in any words. Santa sits in the sleigh and watches. He doesn't say a word. Should I ask him if I'm going to get a tour? Well, Santa doesn't say a word. And so that's the visit to the North Pole, with John and Santa stopping in the sleigh, looking at this scene, and Santa not explaining. Okay, let's go to the next one. That was chapter 2. Here's chapter 3, and another visit to another place. Let me just get the page right. Here we are. Okay, page 27. They land. Santa says nothing. John thinks. A dry and desiccated desert. Santa comes in for a landing on a bank of sand. I don't feel any heat at all. We're protected from the heat. We were in Vegas once, and the thermometer showed 117 degrees. Can't tell where this desert is. Santa doesn't seem inclined to say. Obviously, the reindeer don't feel the ferocity of the sun at all. They seem to know what Santa wants. They just stand and await their cue. Let Santa sit and think, and then move on. Burnt and parched and dried to a frazzle. I assume this desert used to be the bed of an ancient lake. Flat as a pancake, layers of sediment from thousands, maybe millions of years. A couple of buzzards off in the distance, tightening the circles above their next meal. I've heard they can sense when you're getting close to the end of your trail. How can anything bloom in these conditions? I wonder if Santa is wondering the same. How many days does he spend in these places, just sitting and watching and thinking his private thoughts? Or is the agenda being tailored specifically for me? Okay, let's go on to a third one. This will actually be chapter 4. I'll just get the page number here. Here it is. And they move again in the sleigh. Santa and John around the world land at another spot. Santa doesn't speak. John thinks. penguins. Thousands of penguins. Obviously, this is the southernmost pole. I don't see a pole anywhere, but it has to be here. I've seen penguins at the zoo and in those documentaries they show. It's really astounding how they divide their parental roles. One will watch the germinating egg, huddle above it to keep it warm, and the other will slide down an icy slope and plunge into the waves. Water that's cold enough to freeze, but never freezes. Swallowing fish to come back and regurgitate for its spouse. Then they switch on the egg, and the other one takes a turn. They used to have penguins in Newfoundland. I read about it in Farley Mowat's book. My mom got it from the Book of the Month Club when I lived at home. The early explorers would take a board and set it between the rocks and the gunwales. Then the Newfoundland pigeons would walk right up the plank. Then all it was needed was a sturdy club, bash in the head as each one arrived. They'd keep waddling up the gangplank, one after another, like cattle or sheep, till you had enough meat to salt away in the hold. Wonder whether Santa knows all this. Wonder if he's ever going to talk. Wonder if my voice would make any sound if I spoke to him. Okay, let's do one more for this reading. This will be chapter 5, and it'll be page 44. So again, Santa and John in the sleigh, touring the world, landing somewhere. Santa looking but not speaking, and John thinking and wondering. Here we are. This is really something. I've never seen the bottom of the ocean. All these fish are so brightly colored. There's what looks like an 18th century wreck, spars and yardarms, and even a wheel where the captain used to stand. There's a whale opening wide and scooping a whole school of frantic victims, keeping my eye out for sharks, but Santa doesn't seem to be worried at all. 8 tiny reindeer and Rudolph would make a delectable feast. We're not getting wet, so we're obviously in a sea-proof bubble of some kind. We're probably invisible to everything in the ocean but ourselves. The reindeer stand and wait, as if they're still on land. There's not much chance that any of us will drown. This is obviously one of the trenches. Santa hasn't said a word. He just took the reins and off we went again, plunging down and down and down and down and down. Let's see. There's the Marianas Trench, and then there's the Mid-Atlantic Trench, or am I thinking of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge? I wonder if Santa knew about these under-ocean landmarks before they were found. The air bubbles out of the fissures. It's supposed to be hundreds or thousands of degrees. I'd be boiling to death if Santa wasn't around. Well, nothing to do but sit here and think, I guess. No point in trying to leave the sleigh. Santa hasn't said a word in all this time. He sits and thinks beside me. I sit and think beside him. I wonder if my words would bubble if I asked him why we're here. Okay, so there's 4. There's 4 more for another video. There's 8 in the book, 8 scenes that he and Santa visit. But here's a note about this that I wrote for this video. The question that I asked myself as I was writing this novella is, what is Santa thinking? It's a question that John, the character, asks himself all through the story of the novella. It's also the question that I, John, ask myself as a reader of this novella. I often write in my notebooks and journals that we humans think at the deepest levels of our minds in imagery. So, it's not surprising that Santa, a human-like mythical creature, also thinks at the deepest level of his mind in imagery. What's frustrating, though, to John the character is that Santa, when he takes John on a tour of the world, shows John what he's thinking rather than tells John what he's thinking. He shows John the places of the earth that cause him to think about what? Perhaps about the universe and his role in it, or perhaps only about his own personal life and how it differs from the humans that he sees every Christmas Eve and takes for rides all over the world whenever they appear beside him on his sleigh. Well, John sees a pattern in these places that Santa takes him to, an idea pattern, I would say. And John's idea is that Santa is showing him the most extreme places that human beings are capable of visiting. They range from the highest places in outer space to the lowest places at the depths of the ocean, from the North Pole to the South Pole, to places of evidence of natural disaster and of human conflict. However, at no time does Santa ever explain what he's thinking as he stops and looks at these scenes. As frustrating as this is for John, and perhaps for the reader of this novella, it is the way of life itself. If the universe has a plan or a purpose, it presents its thoughts to us in images, but never a word of explanation does it offer. It's interesting, though, that at one point Santa explains that he never takes a load of children to these extreme places. He always takes them to scenes of happy children around the world who are anticipating his visits on Christmas Eve. So that's interesting, I think. So once again, this is the novella, John and Santa, the Cowboy Shirt. It's available on Amazon. There's information there. It's available at my publisher's website, roxmillspress.com. And also, if you go to my website, johnpassfield.ca, there are 2 free books with tons of information, my thoughts, a planning notebook wherein I planned and wrote the novella, and a journal in which I reflected on the novella and many other topics as I was polishing the novella. So have a look if you're interested. Lastly, thank you for watching this video.